Hey gamers, so I'm going to be doing another discussion video like I did last time, going over a topic that I've been meaning to talk about for quite a while now. That being the Switch Pokemon games and how I love them despite their flaws. So yeah, let's just get right into it, no point in dilly-dallying, right? So with this video, I've talked a lot about this, kind of sort of, in a tier list video where I was ranking all the Pokemon Switch games. But I wanted to make an actual dedicated video for it because I really do think the Switch Pokemon games are good. They're not perfect by any means. I'm not going to pretend like they are without flaws, but I do think they get a lot of hate, and I really enjoy them. So here's the backstory. I have never been a Pokemon fan until more recently. I had a 3DS growing up. I had DS games, because of backwards compatibility. So I could have played, the classic Pokemon games like on the 3DS or DS, but I never did, and I never really cared about Pokemon. It just wasn't my thing. But then I saw reviews and gameplay and whatever of Pokemon Sword and Shield, and I thought they looked really cool, and the reviews were, well, they were kind of like a mixed bag, but every time I saw the game, I thought, you know what, this looks actually kind of fun, so I did not get the game when it released, but I did wait until they came out with the physical version with the DLC included on the cartridge, which came out a year later in 2020, I believe. But yeah, I got the game. It was like $90 or something. I bought that along with New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe on the Switch. Even though I had that game on Wii U, I wanted to play it again on Switch. So I bought those games, and I enjoyed New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, even though, again, I played it before and people also hate on that game and that series in general, but I grew up with that. So funny coincidence there, I guess. But anyway, this was my first time playing any Pokemon game, and I really did enjoy playing through it. I eventually got all the way through it. I got through the DLC as well, which I still have not seen a Switch game have like the DLC in cartridge. That was really cool for Pokemon to have, even though it's more expensive. Yeah, but it was cool. But I did not go for like 100% on getting all the Pokemon, the Pokedex. I never really cared about that, but I just had a good time playing it. Like, I remember naming every single Pokemon I got. I did not get like duplicates. If I just got, one species, I was fine with that. Maybe if they looked a little bit different, I would get the different like gender variants or different variants, like if they look, again, different. But otherwise, I just got one Pokemon per species, and I would name them all individually. And that is something I still have done with every Pokemon game since, I just feel a connection with these Pokemon. But anyway, let's go back to my Pokemon history, if you should say, I guess. Eventually, I got Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. I did not care about Pikachu. I wanted an Eevee because Pikachu is basic. I got that, and I liked it, but it wasn't as good as Sword. Oh, by the way, I got Pokemon Sword. That's the version I got. But I did not like it as much, but I still enjoyed it. Eventually, Brilliant Diamond came out, and I got that. And by the way, I got like these games around Christmas time. The Pokemon Sword DLC bundle thing, I got with my own money when the bundle came out, like the same day it came out or around the same time it came out, which I think was November again of 2020 or something like that. But the other games I got, like Christmases, Brilliant Diamond, I believe I got the Christmas of 2021, and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee maybe 2020. I'm not completely sure, but I think that's like around the timetable. But I really started to like Pokemon, and this was weird because I never really cared about Pokemon before. And this, yeah, still continued again with Brilliant Diamond, which is another game. In fact, all the Switch Pokemon games people have like trouble with, and I want to explain why I feel like they're good. But let me continue before we get to that. Anyway, Brilliant Diamond, I really enjoyed that as well. Yes, I heard the complaints about, and I heard the complaints about all the other games, but this game, the complaint was that it didn't include the Pokemon Emerald versions content or whatever. There was like a third version of Diamond and Pearl, and it did not include that content in it. So, people were disappointed, but I really enjoyed it. And then, of course, Legends Arceus came out, which I believe I got with my own money. in January. So, Pokemon games back to back. I was just playing them and, loving them, in a somewhat short period of time within only like, what, 2 years, because again, or was it less than that? Yeah, and probably less than that because again, end of 2020, Pokemon Legends Arceus, and then Scarlet, came out in 2022. So I guess in total it counts like, longer than a year, but shorter than 2 years. So yeah, pretty quick turnaround for me. And I really did enjoy this one. It was probably my favorite Pokemon game at the time, and still is. It's still pretty good in my opinion. It just felt so open, so free, and I mean, I keep saying it, but I really did enjoy it. But this one more so than some of the other ones, because Pokemon Sword was the major one I enjoyed. The other games I liked. I kind of was lesser on Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and a Brilliant Diamond I liked more than other people, but Pokemon Legends Arceus really was like, oh my god, so good. So eventually we got news of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet coming out, and I saw again the reviews, and this time they did leave me a little bit concerned, but I was like, you know what, I still want to get it, and I did get it the Christmas it came out. It came out November of 2022, and then I got it Christmas of that year, and I liked what I played of it. I did. Of course, I think the problems with that game is more apparent than some of the other games. The other games had so many quote-unquote problems that I feel like kind of were dumb. Like with Sword, there were like two major problems. One, it didn't advance the series high enough and it still looked kind of basic. It looked like an HD 3DS game, what people said, but I liked the art style. I thought it was good. But it didn't do far enough because it was kind of open world at some parts, but it didn't go even further like other people wanted. They wanted a big step for Pokemon. And then the other thing was the stupid Pokedex thing that I never found to be interesting. Like, who cares, like, at all? And then Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu. They were kind of like remakes slash like conversions of Pokemon Go, but for consoles. But in the style of Gen 1, which was kind of weird, especially because you can only use motion controls with a single Joy-Con in TV mode, but in handheld mode, you can play with buttons. So, that's more justified, I feel, than the Pokemon Sword controversy. And then Legends Arceus, there wasn't too much controversy, though there was still like, oh my god, this isn't like a mainline game, technically. It is, but it's kind of not. It's kind of weird. But also the graphics don't look that good. So there was that, and the Brilliant Diamond was another thing where, oh my god, it looks dumb. The graphics look awful. I wanted like a really big 3D style game, not like a top-down game. It's kind of like a faithful remake, and people didn't like that. But again, I thought it looked good, But the Scarlet and Violet stuff, yeah, I really can't defend it. The stuff like the performance or whatever, it was and still is noticeable to me, but I still enjoy what I played of it. I eventually bought the DLC too, though I never finished the game. In fact, I decided, around this time when I was like halfway through Pokemon Scarlet, that I wanted to buy like a PlayStation and an Xbox. So I sold like most of my games to afford it, which included the Pokemon stuff, and I figured I would never get them again, so I deleted my save data on the games, which I'm really annoyed that I did that. I feel like that was dumb, man, that I deleted that. But I was like, oh, I played through them. I don't need to play through them again. Pokemon Scarlet was like I did not finish it, but I was thinking, and I kind of let my opinion of what the internet said get to the best of me. Not that I didn't agree with them, but I kind of let it cloud my own enjoyment of the game, where I'm like, it's buggy, so I'm just gonna delete it, the save data. And I hate that I did that. I really do. I eventually restarted the game over again, along with Pokemon Legends Arceus, which I picked up again somewhat recently, and I'm starting over. That's the footage you're seeing right now of the live stream I did of the game. But yeah, I hate that I started over. I really let opinions of others cloud my judgment. Like, oh my god. But again, going back to the topic, I keep getting sidetracked, but there's a lot to cover. But anyway, my whole point is that overall, I still enjoyed all of the Pokemon games, Scarlet included. And I eventually started replaying it again, and now I'm like a little bit past of where I originally was, and it's been fun. It's been fun. I've been doing like quote unquote permadeath streams. No, not a Nuzlocke, but like a permadeath, except not really. Where if my Pokemon dies, I just rename them to name two. So for example, their name is Sam. Shout out to you, Sam, who's a mod. Anyways, Sam, if he dies, the Pokemon, I rename it to Sam 2. And then if that Pokemon dies, that version of that Pokemon dies, Sam 3, and then Sam 4, and I also can revive them until after the battle is done. So that's how I've been doing streams, in case you've been missing them. It's pretty fun. I haven't done one in a little bit, but I do want to get back to it. But basically, my point is that despite the issues people have online about these games, some of which are rightful issues, especially with Pokemon Scarlet, like, oh my god, those games. But like, I still enjoyed them, and towards, when I was playing through Scarlet, I was like, I started to let the opinions of others judge my own opinions. And I have tried to my best to like rectify that trait of mine, because I used to do that a lot before in the past. I did that with Marvel stuff, with Star Wars stuff, any popular TV show or movie or whatever that came out, and people were like negative about it. I started to copy them and be like, yeah, that thing sucks too. Even though one, I either haven't seen it, or two, if I have seen it, I just let the opinions of others cloud my actual opinion, And that's not to say, again, that their opinions are wrong. It's just that you should form your own opinions. If they align with yours, then great. But if it doesn't, that's also fine. And you don't have to follow, the trend, of hating something or loving something, If everyone loves a thing and you don't, that's fine. Form your own opinions, And I used to be like just following what other people said online, and I kind of mostly ignored that for when I first started playing the Pokemon games on Switch, but it eventually got to me, maybe part of it is because, again, it was really unforgiving with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the performance of stuff, but still, I did enjoy what I did of those games. The story is pretty good. I hear lots of people like the story, especially towards the end. And I know like the spoilers or whatever, but I haven't experienced it myself, and there's a lot of good things about that game and all the Pokemon Switch games. They did a lot right. Even though lots of people like to dog on them, they did move the series forward. Pokemon Sword, moved the series a little bit towards an open-ended zone, with the open areas, open world, which is what people wanted for a while. All the Pokemon games up to that point were just the same old thing, with gyms and badges and fighting trainers and going through routes. Pokemon Sword was mostly still that, but it did introduce some other stuff. Brilliant Diamond, Silent Pearl, they were just remakes along with Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, so they kind of don't count. But at the same time, specifically with Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, they did try something new with like the motion controls and stuff, which is a thing people were wanting with Pokemon up until that point. I remember people wanted something new with Pokemon, because it was the same thing again and again, and some people were happy that they were like taking different steps, but other people were like still complaining. It was like, oh my god. But then the series really took a leap forward with Legends Arceus, which was way more open. It was not like an open world, but it was like an open segment type thing, with big areas you could do whatever. And then Pokemon Scarlet and Violet really leaning into that open world. Again, that's not to say that they didn't have issues. Again, the bugginess in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, oh my god. But I keep mentioning that because I just want to tell you guys that I understand their flaws, and I get them, and I have them, many of them too, I'm not like a blatant, like, oh my god, the Switch Pokemon games are amazing, they have no issues, everyone that dislikes them are wrong. I'm not like that. I'm just trying to say that I like them despite their issues, you know? And I think they did a lot right in moving the series forward. You know, we saw like little steps towards being more open, you know, when the Switch first started, and now that it's ending, you know, we saw it full on leap forward to open world, and I think it's going to continue with that, and hopefully run better now that the Switch 2 is available. Even though, guys, the Switch 1 is not the reason why Pokemon Scarlet and Violet look bad. Have you seen what Monolith does? Oh my god! But you know, still with better hardware, I'm sure it will look at least better, you know, inherently the Pokemon games that come out after Scarlet and Violet. Heck, this already seems like it's the case with Pokemon Legends Z to A or whatever, where that's getting a Switch 2 version that looks a bit better on, you know, that console than on the current Switch, though it already, I thought, looked good on the current Switch, looked better than Scarlet and Violet. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but that's just how I felt. Oh, and also, you know, we got news of what they're going to be exactly improving with the free Switch 2 patches for Switch 1 games. And in that, it shows improved frame rate for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So yeah, I think overall this shows that there's a good future for the series on Switch 2. But that's not to say that the Switch 1 era of Pokemon was bad, you know, in my opinion. In fact, I just think they did a lot of right. And of course, I'm biased because they were my first Pokemon games. You know, I still have not played any of the previous ones, you know. I really want them to release the classic Pokemon games, you know, on Switch Online. Like, seriously, what's taking so long? Me and other new fans that got into the series, you know, with the Switch, I feel like we want to experience where the series started. Like, I just want to play them to get the hype for them, you know? Because I do, from what I've seen of those games, they look good. I never really noticed them before. But now that I've seen some of them, specifically like the ones of the DS and 3DS, the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance ones, I don't know, but I would still like them to be there because I want to give them a chance. But I want to check them out because they do look interesting, you know? I really appreciate the Pokemon Switch games for introducing me to the series, you know? And I got introduced, you know, later on than other people. Let's see, I got it in like 2020, Pokemon Sword, the bundle thing. I was 16, I believe. Time goes by so fast. But I believe that's how old I was, you know, and usually you get into Pokemon when you're younger. You know, that's what people like Scott the Waz say they don't like Pokemon or RPGs in general because they didn't grow up with them. And I technically, in a way, didn't grow up with Pokemon either. But, you know, I mean, I guess in a way I also kind of did, even though it was way later compared to others. Again, I really enjoyed what it did. And it clearly introduced a lot of people to Pokemon. I mean, 2 of the best-selling Pokemon games of all time are on Switch. Pokemon Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet. They're like number 2 and number 3 specifically. Number 1 is still Red, Blue, Yellow, the original Pokemon games on Game Boy. But, you know, the Switch games are popular. And I am happy with that, you know? They have issues, you know. I hope Pokemon Company, Game Freak, Nintendo, everyone that's involved in the weird pot that is Pokemon, they listen to the feedback and they make the games better for more people to like them more. Heck, one issue I didn't even bring up was the fact that they released so many Pokemon games in the span of like only a few years. Like, that's just way too much, you know? That's like oversaturation. Luckily, it seems like they're taking steps to rectify that, you know, with the fact that Pokemon Z2A or whatever was delayed, you know, by a year, and they're taking time to actually work on that game. They didn't rush it out in like 2024. So it looks like we're going there and like a step in the right direction, you know, which you can say that about all the Switch Pokemon games, you know, step in the right direction, which maybe people don't like to hear, maybe they want to hear them go full on steam ahead, but this is like $1 million company. Pokemon, you know, has stuff like merch, TV shows. You know, I don't necessarily blame the game side. You know, I blame all of the Pokemon Company, and they're just trying their best, you know. And I think their best is good, you know. It could be better, but I do like what they're doing. What they have now is good, and I'm tired of seeing people hate on it so much. Again, there's genuine issues with it, but there's a lot right that they did with the Switch, and I hope for it to continue with the Switch too. But anyways, guys, I think that's gonna be it for my video. I hope you enjoyed this, like, I don't know, defense video on the Switch Pokemon games. You know, let me know if you agree with my opinion or think I am trash. I don't know anything about Pokemon. My opinions suck. I should die. No. But if you enjoyed, you know, again, like, subscribe, play some Xenoblade, and I'll catch you all next time for more. Peace. Bye, everyone.